You are listening to Lesson 1, Chapter 2 of Form 4 World History. Cameroon, General Education. Narrated by Wacheseh Academy. Paris Peace Conference, 1919. Circumstances leading to the Paris Peace Conference. The outbreak of the First World War between the Central Powers and the Allied Powers. President Wilson of the USA promised a liberal peace settlement in January 1918 in his 14 points. Germany surrendered on November 11, 1918, bringing an end to the First World War. The Allied Powers debated on the Venus for a peace settlement with the defeated Central Powers. France campaigned and successfully convinced the other Allied Powers for the peace conference to take place in Paris in order to take her revenge on the Germans. Main leaders and interest. Woodrow Wilson brought the 14 points. Freedom from foreign rule. Nations to be given a democratic governor of their choice. A liberal peace settlement. Creation of the League of Nations. George Clemenceau. To weaken German economically and militarily. To create an independent Rhenish Republic to act as a barrier between France and Germany. To recover all lost French territories. To gain heavy reparation. Lloyd George of Britain acted as a moderator between the liberal Wilson and the harsh Clemenceau. To protect British economy interest. Vittorio Orlando from Italy. To punish Austria. To make territorial gains. War-on Mackinac of Japan. Wanted racial equality. To make territorial gains. Aims of the conference. To create new national states from the former large, German, Austria-Hungarian, Turkish, and Russian empires. To discuss disarmament and the reduction of the military power and prevent the outbreak of another war. To promote the adoption of democratic government in. To work out reparation. To promote freedom of trade. To create a permanent international organization that will maintain world peace and prevent the outbreak of another war. To decide the fate of the former colonies of the defeated Central Powers. Problem that faced the peace makers. The conflicting interest of the peace makers. Wilson wanted a liberal peace settlement while Clemenceau of France wanted harsh settlement on defeated powers. Britain and France wanted commitments made in 1915 with Italy to get her involved in the war to be respected, while the USA was against the secret Treaty of London in 1915 that had promised the Italians a lot of territories on the Atlantic coast. The Bolshevik Revolution in Russia and the fear of communism made it difficult for the Western powers to allow Russia to take part in the conference. The venue of the peace conference in Paris was very hostile. It was not easy to create new national states for the minorities because the races were mixed up in Europe. It was military unwise to allow the Germans to enjoy the principles of self-determination by accepting union with the German-speaking population of Austria, because Germany would be strong enough to endanger world peace again. It was not easy to arrive at reparation that will compensate for the material and human destruction caused by the war. Peace treaty dealing with Germany of the Treaty of Versailles, June 28, 1919. Territorial. France recovered Alsace and Lorraine. Belgium gained Open and Malmedy after a plebiscite. Denmark gained northern Schleswig after a plebiscite. A plebiscite was to determine the future of Upper Silesia. Poland gained Posen and West Prussia. Germany was forbidden to the unit with Austria. Germany lost its trading rights in China and Egypt. Danzig became a free city under the League of Nations. Saar was put under the League of Nations for 15 years, and the mining interest under French control. Memel was placed under Allied administration but was later seized by Lithuania. Germany lost its protectorates. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk was declared void. Germany lost concession and trading rights in China, Egypt, and Middle East. Military? Reduced to 100.000, no conscription allowed, limitation of her guns, demilitarization of the Rhineland and Heligoland. Army occupation on the west bank of the Rhineland and bridgeheads at Cologne, Koblenz and Mainz from January 1920. Allowed only 15,000 sailors, 6 battleships, 6 light cruisers, 12 destroyers, and 12 torpedo boards, no submarine Air Force. It was entirely prohibited. War guilt. Article 231 of the Treaty of Versailles blamed Germany and her allies for the outbreak of the war. She had to pay reparations. Reparations? Allied Reparation Commission fixed the sum of £6.600 million. A fixed quantity of coal had to be handed to France. Germany surrendered her merchant ships to Britain. A number of cattle, horses, and sheep had to be handed to France, Belgium, and Italy. The Covenant of the League of Nations was written into a treaty. The German justification that the treaty was harsh and unjust. The 440 articles of the Treaty of Versailles were never negotiated with the Germans. The peacemakers refused the Germans' the speaking population of Austria to unite with Germany. The German ports of Danzig were placed under the control of the League. More annoying, the Poles were allowed to use it. The Germans in the Polish corridor were sacrificed to Poland, making administration difficult for the Germans because East Prussia was separated from the rest of Germany. The Germans in Sudetenland were sacrificed to Czechoslovakia to give the newly created state good defensive geographical frontiers. The Germans lost their lawfully acquired protectorates, depriving them of cheap new materials. Reparation destroyed the chances of her prosperity. The Germans felt that their army of 100.000 was not enough to maintain law and order. The argument for the treaty. Some of the territories Germany lost have been conquered by other powers. Germany lost some territories as a result of a plebiscite, such as Open and Malmedy to Belgium, northern Schleswig to Denmark. It led to the creation of new states for the minorities from German territories. Poland. The treaty which the Germans imposed on the Russians after their defeat in March 1918 was harsher than the Treaty of Versailles. The reparations imposed on Germany were not the real cost of war but merely compensation. The Germans had destroyed French coal fields during the First World War, hence it was justified to allow the French to extract from Saar coal mines. The German military power was not destroyed completely. The demilitarization of the Rhineland was better than the creation of Rhenish republics to serve as a buffer zone between France and Germany. The Germans' colonial record had been bad, the natives' population had been protesting, and there was a need to improve on the administration and put an end to the harsh rule. The treaty maintained peace in Europe for 20 years. The peace treaty with Austria. The Treaty of Saint-Germain, September 10, 1919. Austria was forbidden to unite with Germany. Austria was separated from Hungary. Austria lost territories to Poland, Czechoslovakia, Italy. The population of Austria reduced from 28 million to 8 million because of the territorial adjustment. Reparations? Austria had to pay for damage caused. She lost her industrial wealth to Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia because of the adjustment. Military? Her army was reduced to 30.000. She was not allowed to have an air force and submarine. The Covenant of the League of Nations was written into the treaty. The peace treaty with Hungary, the Treaty of Trianon, June 4, 1920. Territorial. Hungary was separated from Austria. She lost territories to the newly created state of Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. Her population was reduced from 21 million to 7.5 million. Economic Hungary had to pay reparation. List industrial wealth and farmlands to Romania. Military, her army was limited to 35.000. She was not allowed to have any air force and submarine. The Covenant of the League of Nations was written into the treaty. The peace treaty with Bulgaria, the Treaty of Neuilly, November 27, 1919. Territorial: she lost territories of Yugoslavia. She lost Western Thrace to Greece. She gained from Turkey southeastern part of Bulgaria. Military: her army was limited to 20,000. Reparations: had to pay reparation. The Covenant of the League of Nations was written into the treaty.